Montreal.
I have no idea. It's been a while, but finally, somehow, through this crazy year, I managed to film this update video. For anyone new here, my name's Lashan. I'm from Sydney, Australia, and over 3 years ago, I left my home country as soon as I graduated to try and make a life abroad. And on this channel, I share my life and experiences around that, how to do it yourself, and also travel. I originally moved to Montreal, Canada, for 2.5 years. Now London. Next, who knows? I made this video to catch everyone up on what my life in London has been like so far, and hopefully offer some insight on what it's like to move here, knowing basically no one, no job lined up, no apartment, nothing. Except the working holiday visa I used to get here. After moving to Montreal, after trying, succeeding, and then ultimately failing to make a life there, I was at a loss. What do I do now? Do I give up? Do I go home back to Australia? No. It was a tough situation to be in, but a better one than worse. I was lucky enough to have been in a pretty well-paying job towards the end of my visa in Canada, and Montreal's a city with a pretty low cost of living, so I had a solid amount of savings to live on. So my circumstances were, I'm young, I have enough money, I didn't want to go home back to Australia, and I have absolutely nothing left to lose. So once my visa expired in Montreal, I went all out. I crashed a wedding, I bought a last minute flight to Guatemala and Mexico 13 hours and 19 minutes in advance, hiked a volcano, convinced Canadian immigration to let me back into the country as a tourist with a one-way ticket into the country, which is not easy. Invited a bunch of strangers to my birthday party in my apartment, and then finally made my plans to leave. I packed my bags, went through a slightly tense visa process, the UPS ran away with my passport, and moved to London after a 3-week escapade in Paris. Prior to moving to London, I began to look for jobs there and found a position that was perfect for me at a company I used to work for in Sydney. After reaching out to their offices in London, they agreed I'd be a good fit, and I made it through the first stage in March, but the second stage wouldn't take place until June or so. Considering I'd already worked for them before and they personally told me that I'd be a good fit, I thought I was a shoo-in for at least an interview. This lead was one of the factors that pushed me towards London as opposed to Berlin. I arrived in London with my 58 kilos of luggage and slept on an air mattress in the dorm room of a very kind stranger turned friend. Thank you, Ben, who offered to host me for a few days around Kensington. It felt bizarre to be back in a country that drove on the left side of the road, even though I was born in one. To be back in a city that I didn't even really like that much the first and only time I visited. It felt like an older, more expensive version of Sydney with better public transport. That's where my opinion began and ended. But I was here. This was my home now for the next 2 years, and I had to make it work. Got no time to waste. Being the second time round where I've moved my life to another continent, I knew exactly what to do to hit the ground running. Get my visa card, get my phone number, bank, apartment, and job. The first 3 came pretty easy. My apartment? 5 days. I was looking for East London, around Shoreditch, but not Shoreditch because it was too expensive. It would be easy to get to that job I was in the running for because it was on the Central line. I saw a lot of bad places, including one in Bethnal Green that barely had space for a bed, and right outside the window, you faced the overground train line. And it cost almost double my Montreal apartment. It's quite a shock to be back in a country without ridiculously cheap rent again. After getting a grasp of all the different neighborhoods, I came across a little place called Mile End. In Montreal, my apartment was in a neighborhood called Mile End, which is, in my humble opinion, the coolest neighborhood in Montreal, and by extension, Canada. I saw it and thought, wouldn't it be funny if and then a few apartment inspections later, I did. Everything felt right and I moved in the next day, from one Mile End to another. It's like I never left. So by the end of the first week, I had all of my admin done and found an apartment. Not just a placeholder or a last resort, but somewhere I wanted to stay. By all accounts, I'm on fire right now. Coupled with catching up with friends living in London, making new ones, and exploring an exciting, vibrant, and relatively new city, I was having the time of my life. My first impressions of London were quite different from what I expected. I don't think I ever realized how big this city is, even just zone 1 or 2. Architecturally, back in 2014, I didn't think it was anything special for a European city, but it's changed so much since then. The center of London, the bank area has been filled with these crazy experimental skyscrapers. Before, the architecture of London was just old classical architecture and some non-noteworthy stuff, but now it's old classical architecture and the future, with almost nothing in between. It's just this and this. It's such a dramatic contrast that I haven't seen anywhere else. You can be walking through the Tower of London, which is a 923-year-old castle, and you look just beyond the walls and you see the shot. Right there. It's so strange. Aside from that, it's just as brutally expensive as I remembered, maybe some more. But hey, I mean, at least the museums are free. The coffee is better than in Montreal, thanks to the Aussies, of course. Tons of parks, heaps to do. I quite like this city. If you know me, the thing I crave the most in my life is momentum. When I'm out pushing to make moves, to do things, and the world is responding with yes, cooperates with me and lets me keep going. It gives me a positive energy that just builds and builds and builds. That's where I was at. It's when the momentum is brought to a halt against my control that brings me down. I got to that final, crucial step. Getting a job. You know what that means, guys. Buckle up. Here we go again. Oh, God. My thoughts coming into London was that it would be a lot easier than Montreal to get a job. No language barrier, I had a bit more experience, and judging by my old company's willingness to consider me for a role while in another country an ocean away, an openness to internationals, I was only a little bit right. There was no language barrier. That's something. The general advice I got from everybody was, never apply to jobs directly, always go through recruiters. So that's what I did. Applied to about 60 or 70 of them. 12 actually got back to me and scheduled an interview. I will go in depth about recruiters and job hunting advice in another video, but all I will say is this. Dealing with recruitment agencies is the worst. The first one I applied to called me back right away in 5 minutes, saying my profile was great, but then asked me to stay exclusive to them, while he pitched me to employers. That guy literally never contacted me again or responded to my messages. If I trusted him, that's where my story in London would have ended. Then and there. You want a shout out, guys? Capstone Recruitment. Bunch of worthless liars. Full blacklist coming in a later video. The main difficulty I came across when applying for jobs and dealing with recruiters was blatant discrimination against non-UK/EU citizens, i.e. anybody on a visa. I lost count of how many times I get contacted for a job that I was perfectly qualified to do all the steps, submit a tailored CV, only for them to completely cut me from the running as soon as they found out I'm on a visa. Some recruitment agencies blanket cut you from all permanent jobs if you're on a visa as a hard rule. The typical excuse I would get is like, oh, we're looking for the long term, blah, 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 blah. But that excuse doesn't hold because A, this is London. It is a genuine miracle if anyone holds any job for a year. B, if you hire someone on a visa and then sponsor them, they're basically married to that job for at least 3 years and have few opportunities to leave. And C, that, in the long term, which I happen to fail at seeing, is a lot cheaper than hiring a British person, training them, having them leave after 6 months, finding another British person, training them, having them leave after a year, etc, etc, etc. The argument doesn't hold. Blatant discrimination on basis of nationality. Just say it like it is. One time I applied for an agency who contacted me back about a position and was very keen to have me in for an interview, but then went down an extremely discriminatory line of questioning over email. They also just wanted to clarify the soonest you're potentially available to interview and start the position, and if you require a working visa. I'm able to interview tomorrow, and I don't require a working visa, because I already have one. Just to clarify, do you have British/European citizenship? 7th time I've been asked this question. Why does this matter when I have a visa that lasts 2 years? I don't. I'm an Australian, but I have a Tier 5 visa that I just started. Thank you for clarifying. When is it valid until? And will you then require sponsorship? It's valid for the next 2 years, and then after that, I would need sponsorship. You happy now? Thank you for clarifying, and have a good evening. Go screw yourself. Basically, finding a job is bullshit. in London. Well worth the £844 for a visa that's essentially meaningless. Weeks of this went by without anything to show for it. To keep myself sane, I'd break up my day so I wouldn't be doing nothing but search for jobs. Every day I would wake up, go to the gym, apply for jobs for a few hours, and then go to one of the many free museums in London in the few hours before closing. That way, just in case absolutely nothing worked out, I would have gotten something out of this city. Now, I've dealt with long job searches before. It took me 8 months to find my proper job in Montreal, but that was Montreal. Montreal is cheap. With the 6,000 Canadian dollars I arrived there with, I could have easily lasted for 6 months, completely unemployed. This is London. London is not cheap. Every time the new month came around, I cringed as the next rental payment completely decimated my savings. Not to mention that month of deposit I had to pony up with that first month of rent. In Montreal, deposits are illegal. As they should be. I arrived in London on the 18th of June, and now it was a week and a half into August, and I still hadn't gotten a job yet. Reaching out to my old company for no news. I was trying everything, applying everywhere, following up, contacting everyone I knew. No progress. Money was running out. I was stressing out. Finally, I started getting callbacks about jobs I was eligible for. I was in the running for 2 different positions, one a 20-minute cycle away, in admin but in my industry, the other over an hour away on the tube. I felt like I had to get something at this point. I needed to. I went in for an interview for the closer job, all suited up, prepared, and super nervous. I got to the area early, but then arrived 10 minutes late because I literally couldn't find the office. I had to call the recruitment agency who had to triangulate my position and then direct me to the office. Great start. Once I got inside and started the interview, I breathed the biggest sigh of relief because, drumroll, the lady interviewing me was Australian. Thank God. Holy fuck. She was super chill, we got along, and it barely felt like an interview. Being Australian, she knew just how hard it was to get that first position in the UK, especially as so many employers ask for British experience. As if that's better. I finished the interview feeling great, and I got told I'd get a response later in the day, so I went to a cafe to distract myself. I received a call from my recruiter, and I was just thinking, it's bad news, it's bad news, it's bad news, it's bad news, and then I pick it up, and then it's the recruiter asking me how the interview went. So it was no news. And then about an hour later, I get a call, pick up, and I got the job. I start tomorrow. Life is great. Everything is awesome. I'm ecstatic right now. And so relieved. This was only a 3-week temporary stint as an office manager / front of house for a project office, but it was in my industry and it helped me get my foot in the door. While their attempts to get me another position in the company didn't work out, it kept me going for a few weeks more. I got that crucial first bit of UK work experience. Yes, even 3 weeks counts. And I made some new friends. I met a project manager in the office from Australia who had been living in London for a few years, and she confirmed that her start in London was super hard too. Her first year in the city was terrible, but she recommended that I do stick it out for that year because things do get better. I didn't really like London much at all at that point, but after hearing about her experience, she solidified my resolve to try and make it work. After that 3-week contract, I had about 1 week of unemployment before I got hired as an operations officer at a university on a 4-month contract. Stability achieved. For now. The thing with finally getting a job though is after about 6 months of your savings in free fall and monthly rent coming in to eviscerate whatever you have left, it takes a few weeks of earning a steady income for your savings to actually stabilize. That 1 week of unemployment definitely didn't help. At my lowest point, I had £5 in my bank account. 5 pounds. That was it. That was all I had to my name. I had to pull some very creative accounting to make rent in line with my paychecks. And the only reason why it was £5 and not negative was because, surprisingly enough, I got my very first paycheck from YouTube for these videos. So yes, you watching these videos and the ads on them, more importantly, literally saved me from bankruptcy. So genuinely, Thank you. Please keep watching the ads on my videos, not pressing skip, and sign up to my Patreon. Do I even have a Patreon? I'll make a Patreon. I wasn't really that worried about the £5, to be honest, because I was getting paid the next day. It kind of felt like a game to me at that point. Like, how low can you go? I got to £5. Anyway, I avoided bankruptcy and I was working in London. All sorted, right? Well, not exactly. The job was basically doing admin work at a university. Picture this, getting paid £40,000 a year pre-tax to basically do nothing all day. I did everything the job required of me. I booked meeting rooms for people, I handled mail and stationery, processed forms and other stuff, but that was it. The worst thing you could do was ask for more work, because as soon as they saw the work run out, they'd send you home without the rest of the day's pay. It happened to my predecessor, who told me while she was showing me the ropes. It was a workplace where you got punished for being too productive, coupled with bad management. I even had my own office, so I couldn't even talk to anybody. I was just alone for most of it. For some, this might sound like the dream, but after 2 weeks or so, it was my living nightmare. The only reason why the job paid so well was because if it didn't, nobody would stay. That's it. I was offered to apply for the permanent position for this role, but I didn't take it. It was that bad. The only good thing I can say about the position is that it's the perfect job to have while searching for something else. So that's what I did. I kept applying to new jobs, to new recruitment agencies, playing the whole networking game, asking friends and friends of friends for referrals. Everything, putting in the whole 9 yards. Somehow, still at this point, I was waiting on an update from my old company about this ideal job position. It's been 5 months, guys. What is taking so long? I'd gone through the first round, which was a personality test in the form of a video game on my phone back in March. I did it while I was in Guadalajara in Mexico, and I was still waiting on the next interview stage, which they said I progressed to. It was a grad program, so I was understanding of long process times, but this was getting a little much. The first person I was in contact with was super enthusiastic and could see I was a good fit. Always responded to my queries, first thing next business day. Then, towards June, another person took over my role, and then communication went down the toilet. From then on, my follow-ups always got met with a blanket, "You are still in our process." Then, finally, after an extremely detailed application, the first stage, countless follow-ups, and 5 months of waiting on a 6-month process for a company I'd already worked for, I get an email from them titled, "Update on your application. Dear applicant, the vacancy has been filled. No feedback available." Alright, so after 5 months of bullshit, I get a generic, unpersonalized rejection letter for the job I was perfect for, that I was promised an interview for, that was the main reason I moved to London for, that I paid £844 in visa fees for. This shit. I cannot overstate how furious I am at this point. This isn't even the first time this has happened with this company. The promises and endless stringing along happened in Montreal as well. They are dead to me. Following this, I was completely done with London. It's overpriced while you're underpaid. It's polluted. It's filthy. The people are rude and have no manners, no spatial awareness, all while having a superiority complex. It's too loud. It's too loud. There are so many negatives that completely drown out the positives. Essentially, everything I was told about this city was a lie. I have a visa that's valid for 2 years. Well, actually, it starts as soon as it's approved, so it's really 2 years minus 1 month or so. This visa lets me work for any company for as long as I want. Well, actually, because of discrimination based on nationality, that £844 visa is essentially meaningless. It's so easy to find a job in London. See point above. It'll be easier than Montreal because of no language barrier. The extreme cost of living makes things need to happen so much faster. Everything you're told about London feels like a trap to get you here, and then once you arrive, it's too expensive to leave. But that brings me to my original question. Why did I move to London? This isn't like Montreal where I was in love with the city and would do whatever it took to stay. This was a pragmatic decision. I didn't even like London the first time I came in 2014. I picked London over Berlin, not because my heart said London, it said Berlin, but because I thought it would be better for my career. But look at where my career has ended up since arriving here. A lot of struggle and a bunch of unfulfilling admin jobs, which is what a lot of the recruiters were coming back to me with at this point too. It felt like London didn't respect my degree, my background, or what I wanted to do, and was hell-bent into forcing me into a dead-end career full of nothing but mindless repetitive tasks and banality. Seriously, I have a degree in engineering and architecture. I'm not gonna settle for booking meeting rooms for the rest of my life, or for the rest of my visa. If I'm in London and London isn't giving me what I want, then I don't need London either. And settling to stay for longer because it's the easy thing to do is a waste of my time. So I set myself a deadline. If I don't find a job that I like, that is worth my time before the end of my current 4-month contract, which I was a month into at that point, I would leave the country and move somewhere else. Period. Throw the rest of my visa away and start again somewhere new. I hit the job search hard. I revamped my CV. Again, I reached out to all the friends of friends, and acquaintances I could find, applied for jobs, hit up recruiters, and got really specific about what I wanted. Being in the UK for a few months meant I knew exactly which words to use when describing my field. I was going all or nothing. I either get something great or I get out of here. This is one of the good things about coming to London without a plan or an end goal. I still feel like I have agency in my own decisions. I don't feel restricted into making any choices to satisfy any predetermined end result. If this place no longer suits my needs, I can leave. For the next 2 months, I sustained this effort, and while I got some promising leads, they never really eventuated into anything. Time was running out, and I began seriously looking into Berlin. Then, one November afternoon, with less than a month on my deadline, I got a call. It was a recruiter who I never applied to, who found my CV on the internet on read.co.uk, and they wanted to see if I was interested in a project assistant role at a little company called, let's call them Company A. And they needed someone ASAP. My eyes lit up. This company, for anyone in civil engineering, is basically the dream company to work for. Think Google, SpaceX, this place. If you know buildings like the Burj Khalifa, the Sydney Opera House, the Shard, the Gherkin Building in London, the Bird's Nest in Beijing, Centre Pompidou, the Sagrada Familia. Yes, they built all of those. I've been trying to get into this company since I started my degree back in 2012. Sydney, no luck. Montreal, nothing. Then in London, a position I never even applied to suddenly falls into my lap. It sounded too good to be true. And it was. I said I was super interested, sent them an updated CV, and then excitedly started texting my friends. Then 17 minutes later, I get an email saying that because of the security checks involved with the government project, they needed someone who had lived in the UK for the last 5 years, which immediately ruled me out. Of course. The recruiter was extremely apologetic and said that she would contact me right away as soon as something else came up, as they did work with this company a lot. Then, 12 days later, that actually happened. I get a call from her that day saying, "Hey Lashan, same job, no security check. Are you down?" Heck yes, I'm down. The first round interview was in 3 days, and the recruiter prepped me through everything and all the things I should mention. Leading up to the day, it was all I could think about, and then soon enough, that day arrived. After all these years of not getting a single inroad with this company, I was suddenly interviewing at their international headquarters. Life is pretty weird sometimes. I walked into that building with an air of nervous excitement. Did the interview, which went great, answered everything really well, and got along with the 2 people interviewing me. Then, as I was walking out of the building, I got a call. It was from another recruiter who also found my CV on the internet, telling me they had a job at one of the biggest engineering firms in the world. And I was like, okay, that could be a couple of different places. But then they sent me through the job description, which was formatted the exact same way as the other job description. And I'm like, I think this is the same company. And then I went through the process, submitted my CV, did everything, and it turns out it was. So, after 5 months of struggle in London and 3.5 years of struggle abroad, I'm suddenly in the running for 2 different jobs at my dream company via 2 different recruiters who both found my CV on the internet. And I'm pretty sure nobody has any idea I was absolutely terrified of completely blowing this interview for a whole heap of reasons. I walked into that office expecting a catastrophic disaster and walked out of there wondering how I pulled off the best interview of my entire life. It was super chill and conversational, and I got along super well with the two interviewing me. I even talked about how I learnt French in a year in Montreal. Everything had me set up to fail horrifically, and somehow I did it. The next day, I got a call back from the recruiter for that position. They ended up picking somebody else because they had more relevant experience. But they liked me so much that they couldn't stand the chance of losing me. So they made another position specifically for me, tailored to everything I want to do, and they wanted me to come interview for it in a few days. I was in shock. From never hearing as much of a word back from this company for years and years and years all over the world, and resigning myself that I would never be good enough for them, to my dream company actively searching me out and wanting to hire me. Is this real life? I went to that interview and also the second interview for the other role, both times completely paranoid that I would get recognized by someone from the other side. Oh hey Lashan, how's it go? Wait, what are you doing here? Thankfully that didn't happen, and both interviews went great. I got along super well with the project director for the first role and met with the director of the company for the tailor-made one. It was the first interview I'd had in my life where it wasn't me selling myself to the company, rather the company selling itself to me. That afternoon, I got a call from the first recruiter asking me if I would take the job if I was given an offer, and I said I was unsure. I really didn't know which one I wanted more. That night I tried to figure it out. I did a pros and cons list of both roles and I ended up on the tailor-made one. The next day, I got a call from the recruiter telling me I got the job. Yes, that one. I won. I seriously cannot believe it. I won. After trying my hardest in Montreal, spending 8 months to get a job, thinking I made it, and then having it catastrophically fail at the end, to struggling and nearly giving up here in London, I landed upon the job of my dreams and managed it before my deadline with 1 day to spare. Hold up, story isn't over yet though. Thank you for watching this long. I promise this is good. This is the good part. That day I was going through all the paperwork to set myself up, including sending an email to the other recruiter saying I took a different offer. Then, the next day, at 3 p.m., the last day at my job, everyone found out about everything. I got a call from the recruiter I went with, or like, hey Lashan, how's it going? Were you in the running for another role at the same company with a different recruiter? And I'm like, yeah? Why didn't you tell us? I was just like, I don't know. I had no idea how to act in that situation. They were also saying how this had never happened before to them, but explained how this created a complete show between the recruiters and the company, and that the other recruiter was pissed that they lost me. Uh-oh. At this point, I thought I was about to lose it all. The recruiter, let's call them Recruiter A, told me everything was gonna be okay, and then told me to ignore all of the other recruiters' calls, of which there were many, and then told me to write a very specifically worded email to them confirming that I accepted the role at the company with Recruiter A, and that I was excited to start on Friday the 13th of December, with the company, with Recruiter A, and that I want to exclusively be represented by Recruiter A. It was intense. So I did all of that, and then the next day, the only day I had off, I got more calls from the other recruiter, all of which I ignored, but then afterwards, I got an email. I got that job too. After she said I got offered the job, there was a bit of guilt tripping like, I can't believe you weren't honest with us, blah 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 blah. But one interesting thing she said was that the lady who interviewed me was really surprised that I was interviewing for another role on the same floor of the office. The same floor. I interviewed for 2 different roles on the same floor of the same company by 2 different recruiters who both found my CV on the internet, and nobody had any idea. How this is even possible blows my mind. But even with this drama where everything almost fell apart at the last second, it all actually worked out. For real. I said in an earlier video that fortune favors the persistent. I just didn't realize how persistent I needed to be. It was a struggle to make it work in London, or anywhere, but it looks like I've finally won. at least until the next video. This story brings you up to date to December 2019. After that comes 2020, and you know what that means. Video coming soon, I promise. Legit, I'm gonna start filming it right after I finish this video. Once I rest, I'm exhausted. So subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss it. Thank you for sticking around through what is probably the longest video I've ever made, and hopefully my experiences were either entertaining or helpful to some of you if you're thinking of moving to London or any other country that isn't your own. I know there was a huge delay with this one, but I am making an effort to catch up. 2020 has just been 2020 and life has just been in a constant state of crazy. Anyway, thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Lashan out.
Used to go around looking for love. You are so fine, so